أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وفرج عن بهم يا كريم. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take us away from waham and towards a proper understanding with faham. One of the du'as which is often recited before the entrance of the class has this beautiful line in it that, "Oh Allah, please take us away from waham and allow us to partake in this journey towards you by means of fahm." And these two are drastically different in their effects, although similar in their appearance. Waham originates from basically understanding which is cursory, which is apparent in nature, which is not rooted in reality. Whilst faham is the opposite of that. Faham is an understanding which is now rooted in understanding, which is now rooted in reality. And hence, faham is the thing which allows us to traverse and grow because it's rooted in reality. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to make the sources of our knowledge that which is rooted in reality and understanding. So having said that, and inshallah with the barakah of understanding these du'as and these pure words from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, let's start the course. So um, this is ALI 676, Quranic Arabic level 8. So far you've done unit 2 from lesson 1 to lesson 5. So we want to do a quick recap of reminding ourselves of what we actually learned in these 5 lessons. I will be asking some questions and just to make it a little bit interactive and see what we remember from these past lessons and if you can hear me clearly or not. Inshallah, then we'll continue on with lesson number 6 today. So lesson number 6, I will inshallah add certain points to the book that we're going through. The points that I'll be adding are from this book called Hidayah fi Nahaw fi Thawb al-Jadid. So this particular book right here, it's a very beautiful book. It's a very important introductory book to Arabic here in the Hausa. I don't know if you can see it or not. There you go. So some points I'll be adding from this book, whilst other points I'll be adding from Al-Hadaiq al-Nabira. This is in the Sharh of Samadiyah, one of the more advanced books in Arabic grammar. So I'll be adding, inshallah, points from both of these books. I thought to bring them here and from my library and show it to you because I felt it's important to see the book itself. It kind of helps us kind of see what types of books are out there, and it helps us, inshallah, in the near future, be able to access such books too. God willing. So the first unit was talking about fi'l, correct? And can one of you guys tell me what is a fi'l in Arabic? How do we define a fi'l? A fi'l has 3 main components to it. And can you guys hear me, by the way?
Yes.
Does anybody want to attempt at defining for me what a fi'l is, a verb in the Arabic language? And what are the 3 components that typically a verb in the Arabic language has? Go ahead. Bismillah, you don't have to raise your hand, you can just speak, inshallah. There's not too many of us in the class right now.
Okay, thank you. I don't remember, but I think fell is a word that represents an action. That's all I remember.
Okay, so it's a verb that represents an action. There are a couple of components that this word that represents an action has in the Arabic language. So One component is that a fi'l is sourced in and rooted in something called a masdar. Do you guys know what a masdar is?
No.
Okay. So the masdar is the essence of the fi'l. So for example, if I give you the fi'l helping, so let's say I'm one person is helping another, let's say, the root and the essence of it is to help. So masdar is the masdar for helping is to help, right? Masdar for being is to be. So in the Arabic language, as well as other languages, right? The essence of the fi'l is called the masdar. It's the thing which from which the fi'l does sudur. It comes from. Okay. So um, another thing that is linked to a fi'l in the Arabic language is the association of time. So in many cases, in many languages, we have three tenses that we cover. We have the past tense, the present tense, and the future tense. And typically, all three have separate conjugation associated with them. But the Arabic language is unique in this manner. Why is it unique? Can somebody answer that?
Has pronoun attached to it.
Sorry?
It has a pronoun attached to the file.
Yeah, so some fi'ls have pronouns attached to, that's correct. One more thing that makes the Arabic language unique is the fact that um, typically languages have conjugations in the past tense, the present tense, and the future tense separate from one another. But in the Arabic language, right, we have fi'l al-madi, which is the past tense, and then we have fi'l al-mudari'. Fi'l al-mudari' is not just the present tense. Rather, it could be uh, just as much used for the future tense as well, right? Some indications of that, like seen and sawfa, can be brought upon the fi'l mudari to further indicate exactly how far or how close in the future the action will take place. So you bring a seen on top of the fi'l to associate a meaning of um, um, the action taking place in the near future. And you associate or you bring about a sawfa in on top of the fi'l or before the fi'l, right? To relay to the listener that the action will be committed, will be acted upon in the further future, not the near future, right? But aside from having fi'l al-madi and fi'l al-mudari', the third conjugation is of fi'l al-amr. So it's not the case like other languages. We have three separate conjugations for three different times. Like the past has its own conjugation and the present having its own unique conjugation and the future having its own unique conjugation. Rather, we have the past and the present future, and then we have the imperative, the fi'l al-amr. So up until now, this should be sounding familiar to you because you've covered this idea of the past fi'l al-madi. Of course, I've added some information in to further beef up, if you will, the understanding that we have from the previous lessons, right? So we have from lesson one, the fi'l al-madi. From lesson two, we covered, or you guys covered fi'l al-mudari'. And then lesson three and four were both divided into fi'l al-amr, uh, labeled imperative 1 and imperative 2, right? So some questions here. How many conjugations are there in the Arabic language? So for example, some languages will have 6 conjugations. Um, I, you, him, her, they, them. Okay. Um, how many conjugation types are there in the Arabic language?
Like, do you mean pronouns or like
Yeah. So what
conjugation of
types of,
time?
so
Pronouns?
So when I'm talking about conjugation, I'm talking about the conjugation can be used for multiple. could have multiple meanings. One level of it is with the time. So for time, for example, we know it has fi'l al-madi and fi'l al-mudari. But now how about the pronouns? How many different pronouns can be associated with the fi'l in one conjugation of it? So for example, fi'l al-madi, how many pronouns can be associated with fi'l al-madi? So if I was to give you a reminder, we have the notion of looking at whether or not basically who the speaker is. So sometimes you're talking about it's either the mukhatab, ghaib, or mutakallim, right? So either you're either the person who's the English translation of that would be either it's third person, second person, or first person, right? And then you have this notion of masculine and feminine, مذكر والمؤنث, mixed in that as well. So now you have two levels of consideration. One is the type of mukhatab, is it a first person, second person, or a third person, as well as it a feminine or a masculine in the second and third person. And then you have to consider a third aspect too, which is the pronoun singular, dual, or is it plural, right? So this idea of dual is very unique to the Arabic language. Many languages don't associate this duality as a specific conjugation. Rather, we just have singular and plural in the English language, for example. But in the Arabic language, you have this thing called muthanna, dual as well. So now if you had a fi'l, let's say nasara, right? When I just say nasara, I'm talking about what? What are, in terms of the three, so is it a first person, second person, or third person? Is it masculine or feminine? Is it singular? Is it muthanna, dual, or is it jama, plural? What would muthanna be? What would nasara be? Can somebody answer that for me?
Third person singular.
Third person singular, but is it masculine or feminine?
Or masculine.
Masculine, perfect. If I was to say nasartu, what would it be?
Nasartu would be I. Nasartu.
So, which would be
Yeah, it would
first
be
person.
first person singular.
So perfect. And is first person separate for masculine or feminine?
You know, the first person is the same for masculine and feminine.
Excellent. That's correct. Now, your book mentions that there is a first person dual as well, right? But in other further books, they take that away, and there, in fact, is left with only the singular and the plural. If you notice, even here, the dual and the plural are of the same conjugation in the first person. فعلنا and فعلنا, for example. Right? And that's very good. So, alhamdulillah, fi'l al-madi. Can you guys conjugate all of fi'l al-madi from the from basically third person all the way to the first person in all of its different conjugations?
Yeah. Kataba.
Kataba. Okay, so if can somebody do a conjugation of kataba for me, please? All 14
Kataba. Kataba, katabat, katabta, katabti, katabtu. Katabta, katabtuma. No, katabtuma. Kataba, katabata.
Okay.
Katabtuma, katabna. That's the same. The dual is the same. And then katabu, katabna, katabtum, katabtunna, and katabna.
Okay. When you're conjugating, try to go from third person, singular, dual, plural.
I can't do it. Sorry, I have to go right down and then come back. It's just the way I learned it, but I'll try. I'll try, but that's how I learned it.
Okay, that's very good. That's very good. The reason I said that particular way, I guess in certain methodologies of learning the conjugation, The traditional way is to learn basically third person, singular, dual, plural, and then second person is in the same way than the first person. So it goes in that order. But that's fine. You can learn a different order if you wish. It's just that in the different textbooks, when it's saying conjugation number 6, that 6 is not the same as the 6 that you've memorized. So then you'd have to kind of go backward and see, okay, which number of my memorization matches with this, conjugation number 6 that's been mentioned here or there, and so on and so forth. So just that is something to, if you learn it this way, that's perfectly fine, doesn't have any other effect to it. Rather, just when you're in the future ever considering an Arabic grammar text, sometimes it say the number of the conjugation instead of writing the full conjugation out. And if they do that, they're typically following the traditional form of conjugating, which is now would be different than the one that you've learned. So that's not a problem as long as you recognize that, and right away when you see that, then you can go back and associate the right number for yourself accordingly. So hopefully that was a little bit help. After فعل الماضي, we went to فعل المضارع. Now, can somebody tell me some specialties of فعل المضارع?
So fail mudare can be for present tense or future tense, or
That's true.
and it can also be in present continuous.
فعل المضارع, what words does it start off with typically?
It's either ya or ta. يفعل like يفعل تفعل.
Yeah, so the
أفعل.
abbreviation for that is atain. So if you take up the words that it starts off with typically, and if you connect them to make one word and keep that as a hint, it will be the word atain as mentioned in some Arabic texts. That's very good. Can somebody tell me what the second person masculine dual form would be for kataba? If I was to take kataba, which is a fi'l madi, to mudari now, right? What would that be?
Sorry, what was it? Was it the second person?
Yeah, second person masculine dual, muthanna.
So, تكتبان.
أحسنت, taktuban. Can somebody conjugate يضرب for all of فعل المضارع?
يضرب.
Yes.
ضرب يضرب.
Can I try?
Go ahead.
Yadribu,
Mhm,
yadribani,
mhm.
yadribuna,
أحسنت.
tadribu,
Mhm,
tadribani,
mhm.
yadrabna,
يضربنا. أحسنت. Keep going.
tadribu,
Mhm,
tadribani,
mhm,
tabrabuna,
mhm,
tadrabina,
mhm,
tadrabani,
mhm,
tadrabna,
mhm,
ad, adrabu,
mhm.
nadrab.
أحسنت. Very good. So the purpose of conjugating these in is to be able to recognize quickly when we see a word in the Holy Quran or a hadith or any Arabic text, exactly what's going on with this particular verb. Right away, we should be able to identify, if this thing is before me, is it a verb or is it an ism? So is it a fi'l or is it an ism, right? Or is it a harf? Because a kalima in Arabic is one of these three. And then right away, if I understand that it's a fi'l, if it's a verb, right, then I should be able to understand exactly what the pronoun associated with this particular verb is, and in which tense is this verb being used. Is it being used in the past tense, or is it being used in the mudari tense, right? Um, this helps us quickly associate meaning to that which is being said. So to get to this level of being able to quickly do that, we have to make sure that the conjugation of these 14 um, 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 conjugations, if you will, needs to be kind of much more quicker for us, trying to make it second nature almost. So one mustahab homework I would give right at this level would be to go back and try and see if you can conjugate. If writing helps, write it down. If just verbally you want to do it, that's fine as well. But just try to familiarize yourself more with fi'l al-madi and fi'l al-mudari. So that when different words are given to you, like let's say kataba, you can take that into fi'l al-madi and then do sarf of that. And then if I was to give you alima, you could take alima into fi'l al-mudari and then do sarf of that. And sometimes you don't, if you don't have verbs that you don't know the root words for, it's okay to make up certain root words. Put 3 letters at all and make up that particular verb. But just get familiarized with how the form of that verb looks like with the different pronouns that are associated with it. If you want to use actual verbs, that's fine as well. You can open up the Holy Quran and the first verbs that you end up seeing, conjugate those verbs, for example. As long as they are, like, conjugate just the mazi and the mudari, basically for those verbs. Everybody on the same page with me so far?
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Somebody has their hand up. I'm at your service.
Can you give us the acronym, the help memory aid for the conjugation? You said Ataina?
Atain. Yeah, so atain is basically, these are the letters that the fi'l mudari starts off with. So if you see yaf'alu starts with ya. In atain, there's a ya there, right? Naf'alu, which is the 14th sigha, it starts off with a noon. So that's part of atain. So atain is just those words which come before the fa'ala in fi'l al-mudari. To form fi'l al-mudari, you take the root words from the masdar, so fa, ain, and lam. You take those root words, then one of the huruf al-atain comes before the root words, and then a pronoun is added to the end of it. And then you have your fi'l al-mudari. So atain are those words that get added to the start of the root words of your fi'l al-mudari. Fi'l al-mudari stems from your masdar. Your masdar is those 3-letter root words. So many words in Arabic are either of 3 letters or 4 letters or 5 letters. However, fi'l are either of 3 letters in their root essence or 4 letters in their root essence. Isms can sometimes be of 5 letters as well. Okay, so when you're talking about a fi'l which has 3 letters at its root, and you want to take that particular word and convert it to fi'l al-mudari, then you add huruf atain, and then you add certain pronouns at the end of it. In a very similar manner, if you have a 4-letter a word, but this 4-letter verb typically means you've taken it to a bab, which is a separate situation entirely. We'll talk about that later, inshallah, in the upcoming lectures and lessons. So let's go to lesson number 3. We're talking about fi'l al-amr, and fi'l al-amr. How come fi'l al-amr was divided into 2? What was so unique about fi'l al-amr that it deserved 2 lessons? Can somebody tell me?
Is it because it changed like harakat when you say like like it changes like the harakat when you place it on the last letter. Like I remember that there was something with the harakat on the fi'l itself.
Yeah. So when the harakat they do change, it's true. When we're talking about fi'l al-amr, we have fi'l al-amr are of two types. If you notice, if you guys open up page number 100 or lesson number 3, first page of your text, you'll see that fi'l al-amr, right, is divided into a type which does not have a lam before it. And then later on in the next chapter, certain conjugations are given to you that are with a lam before it. So this very much links to our lesson today as well, by the way. So if you notice, the singular, dual, and plural form, right? These are present for some aspects of the fi'l al-amr. Which one? The one where you're looking at the mukhatab. Your lesson number 3 gives you the fi'l al-amr of the mukhatab. If'al, if'ala, if'alu, right? If'ali, if'ala, if'alna. So these 6 forms of conjugations are unique to the mukhatab. They're unique to the second person. Go ahead. Any question? Is there a question here? Oh, okay. So whilst in unit number 4, lesson number 4, right, the third person and the first person come about too. So the third person and first person, a lam with a kasra, li, is added to the beginning of fi'l al-amr, right? So when this is added to the fi'l al-amr, it takes on a unique appearance as well. So fi'l al-amr itself, because it has 2 different appearances to it in the different persons. So the second person has one type of appearance, whilst the third person and the first person has a different appearance to it, comes with the li. So that's the reason why your book breaks it down. It displays fi'l al-amr in 2 different chapters and talks about them separately. So after that, after some of those points were mentioned about fi'l al-amr in the 2 chapters and certain examples were given to you guys from the Holy Quran, then we reach a chapter called fi'l al-nafi, sorry, right? The prohibition fi'l. So in this particular chapter, it's important to understand, again, just like the other chapters before it, what's happening here? Something has come about before the fi'l itself, which causes, as the sister mentioned, the i'rab, the sign at the end, to change. Right? So in some cases, it's very easy to identify. For example, in the third person singular masculine form, right? A sukoon appears instead of a dhamma. The natural and most occurring i'rab in the Arabic language is dhamma. It's rafa. Okay. In some cases, rafa is shown as a dhamma. In other cases, rafa is shown as a noon. Okay. So this is the most prevalent i'rab displayed in the Arabic language. Now you have sometimes, um, some amil which come about, some actors which come about, and they are placed before the verb itself, and they cause a change. They do an amal. They cause a change on the i'rab. They paint the i'rab their own color. Okay. So today's session, we're going to be looking at one such type of amil. Okay. An example of that we already covered in the past. So chapter number 4 and lesson number 4 and lesson number 5 talked about 2 instances of this type of amil. When in chapter number 4, the lam with the kasra came about on top of a fi'l al-amr, it did a unique thing to the end of the fi'l. In a very similar manner, when Allah came about on top of a fi'l, right? It did a unique thing to the end of the fi'l. All of a sudden, la yaf'alu, sorry, yaf'alu became la yaf'al. So the end of that particular fi'l took a different color to it, a different sound to it. The dhamma was replaced with the sukoon. In certain places, the noon which identified itself as the alamat al-raf was taken away by means of this la. Can somebody answer two very important questions of mine? Why is it the case that in third person, plural, feminine, the noon is not removed? And does this happen somewhere else as well? And why? Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Hello? Oh,
Yes, Sheikh, now we can hear you.
okay. So in third person feminine plural form, right? There's a noon. If you look at your chapter number 5, lesson number 5, you'll see it. There's a noon that stays. In other places, that noon is gone. Why is that noon staying in the plural form of the third person feminine? If you notice, in the second person feminine plural, it stays again. This is a unique noon. So far the noon I was talking about are noon which is an alama, which is a sign that the fi'l is in the state of raf. It's marfu'. Okay? These two noons are not an alamat of raf. Whenever we're looking at the feminine form, both in the third person and the second person plural, right? The noon is an alamat of the feminine form. It's not an alamat of raf. And therefore, because it's not an alamat of raf, whenever an amil, whenever an actor comes about it that wants to paint away all the alamat of raf and place there their own alamat, their own i'rab, well, they can't touch this noon because this noon never belonged to the category of alamat al-raf. It was noon ta'nith. It was a noon which signified for you that this verb is in fact feminine in nature. The pronoun used here is the plural version of the feminine pronoun, both in the third and the second person. Was that clear? Or would you like me to explain that further?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So that gives us a good review of what we've done, as well as we've segued into a little bit about this lesson as well. Let's go further. You guys can all see the PowerPoint slide.
Yes, Sheikh.
Today's session is on huruf al-jazima. So as I mentioned, the essence and the default settings for verbs in the Arabic language is that the verbs should be in halat al-raf. They should always be marfu'. They should always have either a dhamma with them or a noon with them. And that's their balanced state, if you will. Now, whenever certain actors come about af'al, about these fi'ls, about these verbs, these actors sometimes create changes. These set of actors that we're looking at today, these guys cause change at the end of the verb such that the verb becomes majzoom. It gains a jazm. Now, jazm is displayed, this state of being majzoom is displayed by sometimes a sukoon, and other times it's displayed by the taking away of a noon. Okay? In certain verbs that are mu'tal, it's displayed in a different manner, but that's a talk for a separate lesson, inshallah. Have you guys done verbs that are mu'tal yet in past courses?
I don't know. I joined for the past 2 courses, but I don't remember going over that.
Okay, that's okay. It's typically covered later on. Sometimes some people might have covered it before as well. So mu'tal basically means that the verb is sick. So it's either sick because it has certain special letters in it that don't conjugate normally. There are special rules that are applied on how to deal with these letters, right? For the most most common verbs that you've been given with in this level, the book has stayed away from verbs that are mu'tal. Okay? And in defining for you what jazm looks like in some verbs, it also stays away from explaining what happens to mu'tal verbs. I've given a slight indication, just like how the noon gets hasp, certain changes also occur in a mu'tal word. That's later on, inshallah, when that chapter comes in this book. If it comes, we can cover it then. So right now we have these 5 actors: li, la, lam, lamma, and in. These 5 actors are huruf jazima. They give jazm to a fi'l. They allow for the fi'l to go from a state of being in marfu, a state of raf, to a state of jazm. Now, that's their action. These are the actors. So li means should, and we've covered that in chapter number 4. When that fi'l al-amr, right, in the third person and the first person was brought in chapter number 4, what happened to that? Let's look at that. When the li, should, was used for the third person and the first person, what happened? I brought the chart from the 4th chapter here. Right? If you look, the dhamma changed to a sukoon. The noon disappeared. It didn't disappear here because this was not alamat al-raf. This was alamat al-ta'nith. This was alamat that this particular verb is a feminine verb. Okay. So leave you already covered. Okay. So when li comes upon top of a verb, it takes that verb from a raf format and converts it into a jazm form. The second word that was on our list was la. Okay. La, meaning don't or shouldn't, is used for prohibition. We've also covered prohibition, right? In lesson number 5. What happened in prohibition? When la came up on top of a verb, right? What happened? The ending of that verb changed. So if you see here, la yaf'al. Instead of yaf'alu, it became la yaf'al. The ending of the verb changed from a dhamma to a sukun. Whilst in the cases where there was noon present to associate the alamat of rafa, that noon was taken away, it disappeared. So now the alamat that this fi'l, let's say the third person masculine dual format, is in the state of jazm, is the fact that the noon is missing. So hadf al-noon is the alamat al-jazm, is now the basically indication that this fi'l is majzoom. And what caused its majzoomness? What caused it to take on this color, if you will? Well, the actor, this la that came about it. So these 2 words we looked at, and the past 2 sessions covered them intensely as well. Today we're looking at 2 very unique words. Further, lam and lamma. Okay. If you notice in the picture, I've only written one of them. Well, these 2 words have certain similarities to them and certain differences to them. I want to cover with you guys the similarities and the differences. So according to higher texts in Arabic, they have up to 4 differences mentioned for them, right? And they have certain similarities mentioned for them as well. Lam and lamma. So lam, when something never happened in the past and it hasn't happened now, and there's no hope for it happening in the future. Okay, this is lam. This is where lam is used. Okay. Lamma is slightly different. When something has never happened in the past and it hasn't happened now, but there is a possibility for it to happen in the future, lamma can be used. Okay. And we'll see in certain examples just how beautiful of a meaning we can extract from the verses of the Holy Quran by understanding this one little caveat. Okay. So, lam, meaning did not, was not, is used for forceful negation of an act, which never happened or was never done, right? And add here in your text, if you will, something that you have no aspiration for it to happen. Right? One thing that lam does is it also takes the verb which comes after it, the mudari that comes after it, into a past meaning. So an example, a very famous example that we all recite regularly would be lam yalid wa lam yulad. Right? So here the word yalid, when lam comes upon it, first of all changes from yalidu. Okay, the 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 sukoon is present on the dal, right? The verb becomes majzoom by means of the lam, right? In terms of meaning, what happens? Look at the translation. He begets not, right? The meaning has been taken to the past. Not it's no longer talking about the present or the future tense. When lam has come, it's talking about the past. And then the caveat or the unique point that I mentioned today, one of the 4 differences that I mentioned today was what? That this also gives us a meaning that it will never happen as well. There's no possibility or probability of such a thing to occur. Lam yalid, right? He has not uh, given birth, right? He begets not. It's not the case that he hasn't begotten in the past and he hasn't begotten in the present, but there's a possibility of it in the future. No. Lam yalid, there is absolutely no possibility of such an action to occur. Okay, let's brainstorm here. When the Holy Quran is talking about this particular verse, and it brings this particular verse to explain what the relationship between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his creatures are, brings the word lam. And after lam brings a verb mudari form, right, that deals with the idea of birth. Okay, yalid. Now, this yalid that has been brought here, right, what meaning can you extract from it? When the Holy Quran is telling us he begets not, nor is he begotten, lam yalid wa lam yulad, why use that particular verb, yalid? We know that it doesn't mean he does not create. For sure he creates. He's created us. We know that he has not been created. So in terms of yulad, we could have plausibly assumed another verb might have been used there. For example, created, right?
Maybe not to assign him characteristic like a human being.
Which aspect of the human characteristics of birth are we not trying to assign to him in yalid?
In terms of family, in terms of having more than one.
Okay, that's good. That's one level. Is there more? See, when a child is born, there's an umbilical cord which connects the child to the mother. Okay? And when the child is born, this umbilical cord gets cut, and now there's a separation between the child and the mother, such that they both now independently exist. Right? So, Lam Yalid is saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? He did not create such that the creatures were cut off from him, such that they gained independence from him, of him. Lam Yalid is also ascribing this meaning to us, right? That the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates, the manner in which He has created, the manner in which He has brought us about, is not that methodology of birth, where from one creature another independent creature comes about. This coming about, this creation, is significantly different. It's not the case that an umbilical cord is cut and now the created and the creator are two different things now, independent of one another. In the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this relationship is not happening. We're negating such a relationship. What does that mean for me and you?
That means we're dependent on him and he's not dependent on us.
Okay, it means that we're dependent on him. In terms of our existence, like every word that I'm speaking and every idea that I have and every talk that I'm able to give and every action that I'm able to perform, right? I'm constantly in the state of dependence on him. The umbilical cord hasn't been cut. My absolute source of existence is through him and nothing else. Okay. This beautiful meaning comes from this lam yalid. Had there been a lamma here, right, it would be a very drastically different meaning. Okay. Lamma yalid would mean what? He has not begotten in the past, he has not begotten now, but there still is a possibility in the future that he might give birth to, he might create an existence which is independent from him. Rather, here he says, lam yalid, right? Such an existence is impossible. Okay? Well, this was one point I thought to mention regarding a verse we often repeat. Lam yalid, right? Lam yulad in a very specific manner also tells us that his independence is not something that he's gotten from another either. It's not the case that he was given birth to. It's not the case that he gained his independence from another entity, right? So these two aspects of this verse signify very many traits of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us. And if you think and ponder upon these two aspects, our relationship with him becomes more clear to us. One in-class mental thought experiment that I would ask you guys to perform right now, and I will take a 5-minute break to go pray. It's Salah time here, Salat Subh, here in Qom. So I will give you this mental thought experiment to think upon for 5 minutes. I will return after 5 minutes, inshallah, and continue the class. Okay? The mental thought experiment is this. Consider a tree in your mind, okay? And look at the relationship between you, who has now given birth to / created this tree, okay? And consider that in relationship now to us as creatures and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What type of a relationship do you have with that tree, right? And see the differences regarding that particular relationship and this idea of yalid, birth, right? And in the general sense, consider now the relationship between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you can focus on that for a little bit, I'll go pray my salat al-subh and then come back. We'll continue and inshallah end the session off then. Okay. Did you guys have a thought regarding what I said? Can you guys hear me?
I don't know if I think what you had asked is the relationship between that tree and myself when compared to the relationship between God and his creation.
Yes.
And then when I think of, sorry if this is not what you were meaning, but I think if I think of a tree, I have total control of, the tree in terms of how it appears, but I'm also not able to imagine or create something that I haven't seen. Whereas the relationship between God and well, similarly, I think he just his creation, he made it appear. He also has control over it. Um, that's all I came up with.
That's actually very good. So there are some limitations between my relationship and the tree that I have. For example, as you mentioned, I can't create something that I haven't seen. Well, sometimes I can create things that I haven't seen, but typically it ends up becoming a combination of things that I have seen. For example, I've never seen a horse with wings before, but I could consider a horse with wings in my creation and in my thoughts, basically. I've never seen certain aspects before, but I could consider them. But at the end of the day, they're all materially based and matter I've seen. So at some level, I might be able to conceptualize and break it down. And yes, there is a limitation to that which I create. That's very good. Another thing that I can't do is I can't give free will to that which I created. I can't create a tree and say grow. No. Like I can't create a lumberjack and then tell the lumberjack that it's up to you if you want to cut this tree down or not. Right? I can't pass on free will to that thought of mine, right? If that lumberjack was to cut the tree off, then it's me who's actually assisting the lumberjack in cutting the tree off. And at the same time, I can't attribute the action of cutting the tree off to the lumberjack at all, in the sense that the lumberjack was not willful in acting. So these are the separates, these are the differences between our creation, which is our thoughts and ourselves, and the creatures of Allah and Allah. Allah has given free will to his creatures, right? In terms of similarities, you pointed out as well. The similarity you pointed out was exactly that there's absolute control while giving free will. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while having given free will to his creatures, the entire existence of that creature, it depends on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's like how that existence of that tree and the lumberjack or whatever I ended up thinking of, right? Just like that particular thought, at every moment of its existence is bound to me, my person, right? My attention towards it is what creates it, right? In a very similar manner, that which holds existence in place, right, is the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This type of relationship is called ihata, absolute ownership of the created. So, lam yalid wa lam yulad is a great significant indication towards this bond that Allah has with its creatures. Allah has with his creatures. We said lamma, if lamma was used here, it's a completely different meaning. Now let's look at lamma. When lamma is followed by the present tense, right? So it has a very similar thing that lam does, right? It takes the mudari, pushes into the past as well, right? And it's also negating the action of it, right? But in the future, there is a possibility for it to occur. So if you were to say, in this particular verse, وَلَمَّا يَدْخُلِ الْإِيمَانُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. What happened is some Arabi, some Arabic Bedouins came to the Holy Prophet and they said to him that we have brought Iman. And the Holy Verse comes and says that don't say that you have brought Iman, rather that you have accepted Islam. Say that we have done tasneem, we have submitted, right? So this verse is kind of mentioning that just because you have submitted, just because you have claimed with your tongue the oneness of Allah and the Prophet of the Holy Prophet, that does not mean that that belief that is on the tongue has penetrated your heart yet. Right? So this verse is now telling you, وَلَمَّا يَدْخُلِ الْإِيمَانُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وَلَمَّا يَدْخُلِ الْإِيمَانُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. Over here, if lam was used, what would it mean? وَلَمْ يَدْخُلِ الْإِيمَانُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ will mean that belief has not entered your heart and it will never enter your heart. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here uses the word lamma, meaning what? In this belief which is on the which this understanding you have on your tongue has not penetrated your heart yet. Okay, and you can see that in the translation. The belief has not yet entered your heart, although it's possible for it to enter your heart. So here's a distinguished meaning between lam and lamma at play. Do you guys see that?
Yes, thank you, Sayyid. I'm very happy about this because I always thought lamma was meant one. So thank you.
No problem. So when lamma is followed by the past tense, it means when. And it has no effect on the Arab of the past tense. So let's look at an example. فَلَمَّا فَصَلَ طَالُوتُ بِجُنُودِي. I don't know the continuation of the verse that wasn't brought here. So فَلَمَّا فَصَلَ طَالُوتُ بِجُنُودِهِ. Okay. Lamma here is brought on fasala. Fasala is what type of tense? It's the past tense. It's fi'l al-madi. Which conjugation of fi'l al-madi is it?
Past tense?
It's past tense, but which so is it third person, second person, first person? Is it
third person singular?
perfect? Third person singular. Is it male or female?
Male.
Perfect. فَلَمَّا فَصَلَ طَالُوتُ بِجُنُودِهِ. And here the translation is when Talut sets forth with the armies. Okay. So lamma has this particular meaning to it. Now there's subtleties in meanings which exist, which I have not mentioned here, and your book does not mention here. They link with a much higher level of Arabic grammar, a much higher level of Arabic understanding. For example, id and ida also have a similar meaning of when, right? But there's a stark difference between them and lamma, and where to use them and what the meaning associated with that ends up becoming. So these changes, I'm mentioning these because I want you to know these changes do exist. These nuanced understandings does exist, but at a higher level, inshallah, we'll get to them if Allah blesses us with those opportunities. We go to the last word in this particular unit. A little bit before I enter this last word is the fact that, in fact, it's not the case that this particular word is the only word which brings about jazm to two fails. Okay? So in the text it says, in, meaning if, is placed in the beginning of a conditional sentence, generally followed by two mudari verbs, both ending with a sukun. In is not the only amil which comes about and creates jazm for us. So now again, using another book to help us, this book is Nahaw Muqaddimati. Again, a very basic Arabic text. Got blurred. Nahaw Muqaddimati, Arabic basic text. It provides for us an understanding of many adawat al-shart al-jazim. One of them, and the first of which is in. Okay. So in is one of them. We have izma, man, ma, mahma, ay, kayfama, aynama, haythuma, anna, mata, and ayyan. All of these words that I've mentioned right now they come upon verbs and they make both, if they come upon two mudari verbs, and they make both of those mudari verbs into sukun, majzum. So the book mentions one instance of such an actor, right? That comes upon two mudari verbs. I gave you a list of others as well. Inshallah, in a text post class, maybe give me a day or two, I will write down for you certain points and nuances that I mentioned that were beyond the book, and I will share them with you, inshallah, in email format, or I'll post them on the WhatsApp group, inshallah. So you'll have them as well. So over here, what happened? Let's look. In ta'udu na'ud. What happened here? When in came about, what two verbs exist here that all of a sudden gained a sukoon, gained a jazm to them?
تعود and noun.
Okay, but ta'udu has a waw and a alif and a dhamma on the dal. Where's the sukoon?
Was it on the alif?
That sukoon is something completely different. What is it showing really? What was ta'udu originally? If in didn't come up, what would ta'udu originally look like?
Without an alif at the end. No?
Without an alif?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But what else would it have had at the end?
In تعودون.
Sorry?
تعودون and noon.
Ahsant. It would have had a noon at the end. So the alamat, that thing that in did here, what did in do?
It removed the noon and replaced
Yeah.
it with an alif.
Ahsant. So in the case of ta'udu, it replaced the noon. This alif is noon. Hamza zinat. It's for beautification only. Okay. So what it did is it replaced the noon. Sorry, it took away the noon as a sign of jazm. In the na'ud, it took away the dhamma and replaced it with the sukoon. Okay? So both those verbs then all of a sudden experienced some sort of a change with in, when in had come about. Another verse to consider. وأدخل يدك في جنبيك تخرج بيضاء من غير سوء. What are we talking about here? Where did the where's the in? There's no in this particular verse. In some places, in some cases, the in is a hidden in. It doesn't appear in its appearance. Okay? So you have to, when something is hidden, when the sun is hidden, how do you know the sun still existed?
Because of the light or the rays.
Asad, because of its effect, right? So if I think that the in is hidden here, then how can I tell where it would have been hidden?
From the majzoom, from the فعل that's majzoom.
Ahsant. Which fail here is majzoom?
أدخل تخرج both.
Ahsant. Is adkhil فعل which one of them is فعل مضارع?
تخرج.
Ahsant. So now where would you think the in is hidden?
So it would be في جيبك أن تخرج, so it would be there if it was apparent.
Ahsant. So it's hidden there. And why is it not on the adkhil?
Is it because أدخل is Amr?
Ahsant. Very good. Because we said this majzoom factor where in comes about, it comes about generally on a mudari, right? It does not typically come upon a fi'l al-amr. So adkhul gets taken out, and the only other verb which is mudari here in the sentence is takhruj, and then we well, this is the effect, and the actor must be hiding here. Okay.
Just a question. Why would it be hiding? Why wouldn't we say وأدخل يدك في جيبك لن تخرج بيضاء من غير سوء?
This is a very good question, and it has a very detailed explanation to it. So I'll give that to you now. Be patient with me. What happened in Arabic language was that, see, Arabs, when they used to speak, just like how me and you, we speak English, we don't necessarily consider what's happening and what's not happening. We just speak, right? Um, uh, in terms of tenses and first person and second person, we don't consider those. We learn the language and speak the language in a very natural manner. So Arabs, the very similar thing that you would speak very naturally. But then people who didn't know Arabic, so people like, for example, people who weren't originally Arabs, when they wanted to write down the Arabic language and explain now what's happening, right? They set for themselves certain rules, certain rules to make the language work, right? To make an explanation of the language work. So in some places, they found out that, well, a certain effect is taking place here. Arabs are using this word in this particular manner. For example, في جنبيك تخرج بيضاء is being used. It's present in the Holy Quran as well. Okay? So they had created a rule, they had created an understanding that, wait a second, in some places, whenever um, a majzoom is taking place, well, that has to be an actor which is creating that jazm to take place. Well, perhaps the actor is hidden. Okay. So then they'd come back and they said, well, perhaps there is a actor which is hidden here. Right? And then they said, well, the only explanation we have regarding this takhruj, because we know in the Arabic language, marfu is the default setting and every word wants to be in its rough state. If a word is not, then the understanding we as the people who discovered, if you will, Arabic by the native speakers, right? An explanation of what's happening here would be that there's an unhidden here. Okay. They do something very similar in other places as well. Now, and this is where sometimes differences of opinions occur as well in the Arabic language, where some uh, 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 adibs would be, adib means somebody who's a expert in the Arabic language, adabiyat, right? So some experts would say, well, wait a second, we have a difference of opinion here. In the next chapter, lesson number 7, I'll display to you a verse that your book says one thing, but in fact, amongst the Arabic linguists, there's a different sort of opinion regarding that particular verse and what is used in that particular verse. Okay. So in this particular case, the linguist would come and say, well, there's an effect taking place. Perhaps there is a actor present too, but yes, we can't see the actor. A very similar thing happens with i'rab as well. We have certain i'rab which are i'rab of the mahal, the place, right? The word itself does not display that haraka. The place is associated with that particular haraka. How do you find out? Well, when you do atf, you can see sometimes when a waw is brought about, sometimes the atf is not to the word, but rather to the mahal. This has significant implications and meanings. Okay. So hopefully that this was I know it could have been a little bit intense, but hopefully that answered your question as to plausibly why certain people would consider that there is some form of a actor hidden here. Go ahead, Sister Samina.
Is this also like, because this is the narration of Hazrat Musa, so in their locution, it was understood like that.
Sorry, I didn't understand the question, the comment. Can you repeat?
So this is the narration of Hazrat Musa.
Yeah, so
Allah narration, Allah giving story of Hazrat Musa in the Quran.
yeah.
So this is Hazrat Musa's time. The communication locution in that time is different from Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa's time. So Arabic has, like, is there any difference because of?
So when we're talking about the time of Hazrat Musa, it's not necessarily the case that they were speaking Arabic back then. So even though the Holy Quran explains to us and retells the account by the use of Arabic, that does not necessarily mean that that was the language in which the event actually occurred in. For example, we know the Pharaoh does not speak Arabic. Historically, we know that, right? But a lot of the times when the statements of the Pharaoh are quoted, right? Um, Arabic is used in the Holy Quran because the Holy Quran came in this particular language. So the Holy Quran uses this language to display and describe events in history sometimes, right? In a very exact and specific manner, such that we can benefit from that description, right? Yet that event does not necessarily occur in the Arabic language in actual history. So in the case of Nabi Musa and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking, it is not incumbent that that speech took place in Arabic, although it could have, but it's not incumbent that it took place in that language. Retelling of it for us in the Holy Quran came about in the language of Arabic. In a very similar manner, the speech between Nabi Musa and Fir'aun, or Nabi Ibrahim and the king at his time, and so on and so forth, all of them are being retold in the Arabic language, but that does not mean that the original story, the original event itself included the Arabic language within it. Was I able to help you understand that portion?
Yes, thank you.
No problem, at your service. Okay. So this is the last few minutes of the class, if I'm not mistaken. I was told that this is the time to allow you guys to ask any questions if you might have from this particular course, or if you might have general questions regarding the Arabic language. I'll try my best to be at your service, inshallah.
Sorry, I just have a question about the book that you showed us at the beginning. Is that somewhere? Is this book available somewhere?
So
Not
this,
this, not this one. The first one that you showed us.
okay. This is Hada'iq. It's a very good book.
Okay.
This is Hidayah fi Nahaw. These are all Arabic texts, meaning that the writing inside them, is all Arabic text as well. So these are typically this book is the first book of Nahaw that is typically covered in the Hawza. Can you see the title of it?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So this is typically the first book that is covered in proper Hausa. In pre-Hausa, this book is covered. So I tried to give you guys, I don't know if you can see that or not.
No. What's it called?
It's called Nahab Muqaddimati. Okay. So I tried to give you guys information from 3 different levels today. I referenced the points that I mentioned from 3 different levels. A level where it's a pre-Hausa level, an introductory level, intro Hausa level, and then this red book that I displayed to you is a higher level advanced book in Arabic grammar. Okay.
Okay,
So I tried to reference multiple levels of Arabic grammar books when I was mentioning these points. There's much more to be said here. I just give hints regarding, for example, this in and then its sister words that are there. There's much more depth to be had there. But at the level that we're at least we understood that in exists, and these are the actions that in can perform, right? And we understood that there are other words like in which perform a very similar action to in as well, right? That should bring about a question for you right away. How do we know that particular secondary word or third word is not hidden here? How do we know in is? And that's the job of now Arabic experts to now come and give their proofs regarding why they think in is hidden here, not something else.
So this brings a question to me, because if it's hidden, I would have thought even if it's hidden, somehow we would have seen if in the translation. But we don't we don't see that. We just see the effect, but we don't see the word, I guess.
So whenever we're translating from Arabic to English, you're losing a lot of meaning. As you can see, this idea that the takhruj is not marfu, it's majzoom. Okay, this particular change is not displayed necessarily in the translation. Many other times, like that lam, for example, lam yalid, right? Once I explained to you the difference between lam and lamma, if you go back, right? Look at the translation. Oops. Look at the difference in translation between lam and lamma. If you can see here. He begets not is all you've been given. Right? Well, when I opened the nuanced meaning behind it, there was much more hidden there. Right? At least in lamma, they brought the yet. Right? For example, the difference between lamma and id and ida, there's really no difference mentioned here. The only thing that the translation comes up with is when. So a lot of meaning is lost in translation. Okay. And one of the critical reasons and key reasons as to why it is encouraged to study Arabic as a language is to appreciate now the nuanced meanings which are typically lost when a person just refers to a translation. It's fair to say that if the Quran is the word of God, the translation is the word of man. That's how different the meanings end up becoming.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. So, if there's any other questions, let me know. If not, we'll be ending the session, inshallah. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to use this session as a means of getting closer to Him and to learn this beautiful language of His and to excel in it and inshallah use this tool to read His holy book in the best of ways. You guys have any questions?
No, مأجور سيدنا.
We'll end the session here for today. Next week, inshallah, we'll continue with the session. I'll be in Medina then, so I am going for Umrah. Next week, I'm going for Umrah. I'll be in Medina. We'll have the class from there, inshallah. I'll have internet access. I'll make sure I have internet access. The week after that, I'll be on the flight back to Qum during class time. So Sheikh Mahdi Qasim Ali, a really close friend of mine, has accepted to teach that class, inshallah. So I'll make the PowerPoint slides and make the notes and I'll hand them over to Sheikh Mahdi Qasim Ali for that one session when I'm actually on the flight. I won't have access to internet on the flight back, unfortunately. So for that one session, inshallah, Sheikh Mahdi has graciously agreed to teach basically that particular chapter when we get there. I'll prepare the slides for him well in advance and inshallah. Hopefully it goes ahead without any hiccups. So next week I'll be in Medina and I'll have internet access there. I'll be teaching you the session lesson number 7. I'll try to cover lessons 7 and 8 next week, but there's a lot more information to be said than what your book covers, and I really want you to appreciate that if possible. So if we don't get to finish lesson 7 and 8 together, we'll try to finish lesson 7 and at least half of 8 for next week. Inshallah.
في أمان الله.
في أمان الله.